Okay, guys, thank you all so much for being here with me. I'm honored. I'm honored to be somebody who speaks for a living, and I look at it as such an adventure. It's an art as much as it is a science. And if you've spoken on any level, then you have experienced this as well. And so, maybe just to get us started, if you were to put on a scale from 1 to 10 your level of comfort with public speaking. Let's say 1 is you're terrified and it's awful and it doesn't go well, and 10 is, I feel really confident. I always do what I plan to do, and my body, kind of behaves. What number would you say you are? Great. Okay, that's really helpful. All right, these are good. These are good. Sevens, fives. Excellent. Yeah, we all start somewhere, and I definitely started not anticipating I would do so much speaking, or that I would have the opportunity to also along the way to coach other people in speaking. So what I want to do is see how we can move you forward up the ladder from that number that you're at now. For some of you, it might be overcoming nervousness. I know for some of you, it's looking for, where are the opportunities to present where I can build my skills and my confidence. Maybe you've had the experience of just getting in front of a group and you're like, what do I do with the time? I have all of this time and I have this opportunity, but how do I make the most of it? Well, today I really want to tell you a little bit about myself and really identify what your goal is so that I can move you forward. So just to give you a little sense of me, I am a professional speaker. I've spoken in over 42 states I've lost count at this point, but to hundreds of thousands of students and adults. And I always like to, if I get a chance, to share this picture because this really is how it started. This is me in front of an audience of high school students pretty early on in my career. And all that they know is that there's going to be a guest speaker on personal finance. That's how I got into this field of speaking. And I'm just setting up my computer, and I feel like these kids are caught in a really honest moment. When you say so, I feel like the kid in the Philly shirt is looking at you like, I don't know about you yet, man. But when I decide, I'm a 15-year-old male, so I'm going to tell you. I might just yawn. I might just get up and just walk away. So he hasn't decided yet. The girl in the pink is definitely already decided. This is going to be the worst thing that has ever happened to her. I've come to love this moment because I really think that there is obviously a gap between us as a presenter and our audience. It might be our expertise, it might be our passion for the subject, or it might be the way that our body kind of gets in the way and makes us nervous or makes us lose our words or sort of ramble or not kind of know what we're trying to get across, and be hyper aware of that in a way that really accentuates this gap. What I've come to understand is that the more that you speak and the more that you are kind to yourself along the way, the more it just becomes a conversation. And it's a beautiful thing when you realize that it's no longer about your performance. It's simply about how you can learn and interact with your audience and help them along the way. I should show you a second picture just so you don't think I'm bad at my job. All right, so there's them later laughing. That's very important to me. I use a lot of humor. When I got the job originally, it was a grant with a company. And it was meant to only be a short amount of time. It was not considered an important mission at the time, financial literacy. I was basically told that my job was like fluffy and unimportant and that it wouldn't last long. Actually, the phrase, don't get comfortable, was said in my interview. And I share that with you because as soon as I started speaking in front of these audiences of students and adults, I realized that I had an important opportunity, that I could share real skills that could help them in their life. I also realized that public speaking was an incredible opportunity not to be some robot, but to be you, to really let your personality shine. And the more unique and authentic I was, the more relatable I was to my audience. one of my goals as a speaker is the opportunities that have come up to really help people become more natural when they're in front of an audience, to really have them be their authentic self. And I've been amazed at where speaking is taking me. So if you are feeling at all like public speaking is a skill that could increase your visibility, right? If public speaking is something that you think is an important way to prove to your bosses or to your peers or colleagues that you have something important to share, or if you have the chance to present and you just really think that it's important that I get the message across so that they hear it, then I'm glad that you're here. I really want to help you move forward in your own experience with speaking, increase your confidence, and increase your progress toward your goal, whatever it might be. As I said, for me, it has been pretty exciting. 2 years ago, I was asked to speak in front of 18,000 students. That's what that looks like. I share that picture with you not to freak you out or make you nauseous, but to tell you that if you persist along this path, if you present enough and you work on your mind and you work on your focus on your audience, you can get to a point where you don't have the butterflies in your stomach, where you don't feel so nervous and self-critical. This moment, as surreal as it looks when I got up on that stage, was just like every other speech. It was just a conversation. It was a chance to share some things I cared about and to see how they reacted to those ideas. It's really a beautiful thing when you get past that discomfort. I happen to love the opportunities I've gotten to speak and to bring fun and humor and my personality into my message. So I want to know for you, I reached out to you about this idea of helping you with presenting, and you obviously reacted with some kind of desire or goal. What is a goal that you have for yourself when it comes to public speaking? Or what is a challenge that's in your way? So feel free to, in the chat, just chop out, just could be a word or two. What is a goal that you have with public speaking, or what is a challenge that you're facing? Keep the flow. Great, thank you. Being consistent in your delivery, that's great. Finding paid gigs, Bryce, excellent, excellent. Be clear and concise, Dana. Yeah, Lindsay, I relate to that. Trying to fit too much into that window of time. It's all good. I want to tell them all of it. And then you find you're like just avalanching them with information. Spencer, I want to be calm and articulate my thoughts and reduce the nerves. Finding engaging stories to share. Awesome. So I want to highlight something that comfort with public speaking can do for you right off the bat. You might have noticed I asked you what's a goal or a challenge, and then there was like a 4 or 5, almost 6-second awkward silence. Did anybody feel that? Did you worry about me? Here's what I've come to understand. Silence is your friend. It's not about saying as much as you possibly can. It's not about, being amazing. It's about giving your audience space to process what you're saying. So I find one way to do that is to ask questions and then to just wait. And to know that waiting is fine because it takes people time to share. And look what you all shared after just a few seconds. That's really, really cool. So I'm going to work on addressing these things. And I've come up with a format today that I think is really, really fun. I went to a summit this summer. I go to a lot of conferences. I'm often there, as a speaker, and then I'm off to the next place or back home. But this conference, I actually chose to stay at for the whole time because I just really enjoy it. It's a college university conference around financial wellness. And I stayed the whole time, and I got to hear all 4 of the keynote speakers at this conference. And I noted something that each one did that I thought you could use in a presentation that would be one moment of real success in connecting with your audience. So let's start with our first keynote speaker. So I'm going to share with you these 4 different techniques that I saw. I'm going to give you a chance to process it and apply it. And then at the end, I'm going to tell you about a special way that you can have your own speaking breakthrough and grow. And so that's kind of the outline of what we're going to do today. If you have a question at any point, you can jot it down, and I will definitely make space to answer. We'll do Q&A at the end as well. So our first speaker here is Joshua Becker. This is a handsome devil. This is actually a personal friend of mine. He is a blogger and an author on the subject of minimalism. And I'm very proud to have known him, about, I guess, like 8, 9 years ago, when he had this little blog, and he said to me one day, "Colin, I got 1,000 views on my blog." He was just blown away, and now he gets millions of views every month, and he's written 4 books, and I'm very proud of the impact that he's having on people, really in the area of owning less stuff. So Joshua was our opening keynote, and he's very articulate, he's very thoughtful, speaks at a nice slow pace, and he said something in that presentation that I had to write down. This is what he said, direct quote. He said, "I made a list of the benefits of minimalism." Now, he told his story, and we kind of got into it when he did this. "I made the list of the benefits of minimalism. Before I share those with you, I'd love it if you turn to someone next to you and answer this question. If you were to own less stuff, how would your life improve?" So he asked that question, and then he waited, and we slowly got into groups and started talking. And if you've ever done group questions, what happens right away is people start laughing, people start connecting in different ways. It's a great chance to take a rest from the speaker, to hear somebody else. What I love about this question, first off, is that it's very, very simple. It's very well crafted. If you were to own less stuff, how would your life improve? What's that, like 9, 10 words? It's very elegant. And also, he gave us this opportunity to think about his message for ourselves. And as we talked about it to each other, I felt a distinct greater buy-in to his message by the time I turned back. And then he had people share what they came up with. And what I think he did so well, and it's something I want to practice also, is a mindset, a technique that I would describe as persuade themselves. So feel free to jot that down. What I think he did so well is he created a moment for us as an audience to sell ourselves on the message. And it was so subtle, because it kind of looked like a just interact with your peers moment. But the buy-in was so much more substantial from such a simple exercise. And I was just dying to have us try this. So now that you've heard the example, let's break down the mindset. The mindset, this first mindset I want to share is this. People are already motivated. Okay? There are not lazy people in your audience. People don't come to hear a speaker because they don't care about making their life better. They do. They're already motivated, but you have to find what motivates them. If you can attach your message to their motivation, it'll be that much more successful. Which means you have to ask some questions, because it's going to be different for everybody. So let's take a minute and let's think about this. How would you, like Joshua did, quickly summarize your message so that you could ask it in that question? If you were to ... how would your life improve? So I'm going to give you a minute to think about how you can make it really succinct. And then when you have it, I would love for you to put it in the chat. I'd be really interested to see what you come up with. I like that. Lindsay, could you elaborate a little bit on the phrase influence at work? You're on the right track. Yeah, I like that. If you had more of a voice at work, more status at work. That might just be important, Lindsay, to test is which of those words really resonates with, to put it unelegantly, the dumbest person in the room, okay? Which in this case is me going like, influence, that's a name of a book by Robert Cialdini. What do you mean in this case? And Bryce, I'm going to give you the same challenge. I love if you were to begin winning with money, but I'd love to have you elaborate that a different way because I'm not sure I know what you mean. Obviously, I'd like to win with money, but I'm not sure I know what you're getting at. Hmm. Nice, Dana. That's a nice one. If you feel confident in making financial decisions, or if you were to, right, because this is aspirational, if you were to feel confident about your financial decisions, what would happen to your current stress about money? I like that one a lot. That shows a very clear, change in their current situation. I like that, Shannon. If you had more freedom in your daily schedule, how would you spend? Maybe you say, how would you spend that time? Right? Make it like a concept. This time that you're going to free by following my advice today, how would you spend that time? These are great. Oh, wow. Okay, Lamia, if you were to relocate, how would you connect to your new community? I like that, but that's a little bit, it's too, and we know each other, so you'll appreciate this. It's very accurate. It's technical. I want to touch more of that aspirational. So it might be more like, um, I just lost it. If you were to relocate, how would you connect to your new community? If you were to, if you were to connect to your new community, how would that feel? How would your life be better, right? Just putting it in more of an aspirational lens. But I like the question any way you decide to go with it, Lamia. If you were to relocate, how would you connect to your new community? If you connected to your new community, how would your life be better? It's nice. Bryce, I hope I didn't scare you off with the winning with money one. For the record, I do want to win with money. I imagine you and I have messages that are quite similar. All right, so this is good. So what you do here now is you can work this into a presentation and just really pay attention to the answers, because the answers that your audience gives you tells you a lot. Not to mention that they are teaching each other and they're, as we said, they're persuading themselves. Anybody have any questions on that first mindset of persuade themselves?
Colin, can I just say, I can also see, you mentioned that this often gets people laughing.
Mm-hmm.
So I could see that also shifting energy in the room.
Say more about that.
Well, I know when I speak, and something that you really helped coach me around was in order for me to feel more comfortable, I needed to get a laugh at first.
Yeah.
So you and I kind of crafted some, like, a couple of jokes or things that I could say, not like comedy jokes, but just little things I could say. But I can also see how you could use this as a tactic to get people to laugh. And then you get to just like center, take some deep, like take care of yourself as a presenter in that moment.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Thank you, Lindsay, for saying that. It is really powerfully true that when you ask a question and hang back and you hear them start to laugh, and because they do, because some of it's just the awkwardness of turning and talking to somebody and I don't know the answer. But it's amazing how that laugh makes you feel like this is going great. Gives you a chance to get some water, stretch, take a few breaths, and it really, really will help your confidence in a profound way. Lindsay reminds me of a good point, which is sometimes it's great to start with a question or a joke that works right up front so that you get that laugh sooner, because when you get the laugh, your brain basically goes, it's going to be okay. This is not going to be the last presentation I ever do, okay? Because our brains are very primal and protective, and they will go there. You cannot be harmed by doing a speech, but your brain is going to tell you that you can. And so when you get that first laugh or that first reaction, I've asked some really easy questions of my audience too. And I think that is really the point, is whatever question you ask, make sure it's clear enough that it's easy for people to answer and they don't have to struggle to try to figure it out. Put a Y in the chat if that is helpful to you, if you can see yourself doing that and I've kind of explained it in a way that feels really clear. Awesome. Nice. Appreciate that. Okay, well, let's go ahead and let's go into our second mindset technique from our second presenter. This is Dr. Paula Hernandez Baron, and she's a new friend of mine. I met her at this conference, and she is has a laundry list of certifications after her name, in addition to just being a really wonderful person. And I got to know her and a little bit during sessions and stuff, and she is Colombian. And so she was telling a little bit about her experience growing up in America as a kid with a different accent and a different native language and just some different cultural reference points, and growing up in a Midwest American town. And it was really interesting. So she's sharing in this presentation models and processes and research that we can apply to have greater impact. But she starts by saying this. Imagine being 6 years old and being bullied simply for who you are. Well, that's my story. And you wouldn't know that if I didn't tell you, because our stories matter. Now, I happen to know that Paula was a little bit nervous to be vulnerable and to be personal in this way. So I made sure to let her know that as soon as she gave this image, I connected to her in such a more powerful way because I knew her expertise and I knew her humanity. It's a very important distinction. A lot of times we share what's impressive about us, or we just get into our content. We don't take time to tell people who we are. And what ends up getting lost is a real sense of connection, person to person, human to human. I'm proud of Paula for doing that in this workshop. I'm still thinking about her choice to be honest that way. And that is our second mindset today. Share your humanity. Now, this I'm describing as a technique because if you don't do it intentionally, it's not going to happen. It really is something you have to choose and to go looking for. So how you could use this. First, let's explain the mindset. The mindset is this. Your expertise makes you credible, makes you an important source to listen to, but your humanity makes you influential. It's by seeing ourselves in your shoes as a presenter that we actually think, wow, well, she was here and she got to hear, maybe I could have the same results. Or more importantly, she's not somebody who had an easy life, not like me. She's someone who also has struggled, and I relate to that, and I feel very seen in her story. See what I mean? It's a really wonderful, intentional share from Paula. And I wanted to have us take a look at this. The way I look at it is I call it the human expert combo. Be expert in the eyes of your audience, be human in the eyes of your audience. And a fun thing to do is to combine them into one sentence. Here's something very humanizing about me. And also, I've been in this field for 15 years. Or maybe someone like Bryce might say, you know, I screwed up with credit when I was young, but now I have $1 million in the bank. You know, I don't know your specific situation, Bryce. That sounds good. But you see the shift there. It goes from really relatable to then really like impressive. So the question I have for you, let's start with the first one. Take a minute and think, what is something sort of humble or human about you? Now that could be a hobby. That could be a really random award that you won, maybe. Like when I was in 5th grade, I won a spelling bee trophy. Right? That's not very braggy. That's very just like a thing. Maybe you're a free throw champion, or you like to travel. So let's have you share something about you that is humanizing. Yeah, and Lindsay gives a great example. You can also share something that was challenging that you overcame. Lindsay's example, I was the first in my family to go to college. It says so much. It's so succinct, Lindsay, and yet it's not hard for us to connect to the challenges you must have faced, right? To develop the worldview that you had. I know you have a master's, so like you had to really change your story to get to where you are. And I think that that makes you very human. Dana, I've been sober for 11 years. Congratulations, Dana. That's very powerful. Thank you for sharing that. I mean, that again, right? What it really does is it eliminates that distance between you and your audience where they go like, well, I could never ask her a question because she's got it all together, right? That's really the power of that. Shannon, I grew up in a military family that moved around a lot. That's a tough experience. I'm not laughing at you, Shannon. I'm laughing at Spencer. Still has one baby tooth. Not only is that humanizing, Spencer, that is adorable. Thank you for sharing. Oh, Bryce, was I right? Bryce said, I signed up for many credit cards to get free t-shirts and other gadgets when I was in college, and now I have zero debt and teach others how to save money and minimize debt. Wow. So that's great. That right there is the human expert combo. It's putting it in one sentence. So let's go back to, great job, Bryce. That's great. Let's go back to Shannon. I grew up in a military family and I moved around a lot. So you might be thinking, what's a theme that came out of that? Or what is a word you might use to describe the emotions of that experience, Shannon? What's a way you can connect that for us? So we're like, huh, wow. I have a little window into what that would be like. These are great. I really like these. You're on the right track. The second question can be a little bit uncomfortable to ask, but I think it's really, or to answer, but it's really worthwhile, which is, so what is something impressive about me? So you've done the hard part. You've shared something humble. Now brag for a second. Tell us something about you you're really proud of. Wow. Bryce, that's so interesting. Traveled to over 25 countries. That's so cool. There's another layer, Bryce, to why that is so effective, and it's because of travel. So there's an idea I may or may not get to today. I think it's in one of my other techniques up ahead, which is touchstones. What does your audience want, and how can you tap into those things and connect them to your message, your advice, right? So travel is a huge one. So just by sharing that, you're going to have a stronger connection with an audience who's like, ooh, I want to travel too. Something you can do, I do a lot of times, I ask really easy yes or no questions, and I raise my hand. I tell them exactly what to do, and I'll say things like, who in here wants to travel? Who in here wants to travel more in their life, right? And you'll get every hand in the room will raise. So even though it's a simple method, what I'm really doing is showing like we're on the same page. I'm connecting to a touchstone. Dana, I like that. My students know I'm on their side even when I say no. There's a great phrase I heard somewhere, in your face, but on your side. It sounds like that might be you, Dana. Direct and to the point, but ultimately, I'm here to help you. Wow, Shannon, I was voted 2014 Citizen of the Year in my community. That's amazing. I don't think I would be voted Citizen of the Year. I don't even know what it takes. Someone else nominated you, I'm assuming. It was a small town. Nice, Shannon. So that's very funny. I think you can play that out as a joke. I'm sure you have before, but you just wait and then add that little detail, and that's just very funny. That's a nice surprise. Spencer, I take a week of vacation to serve at a church camp every summer. So I care about volunteering. I care about giving back. It's awesome. So these are things that you should really sprinkle into your presentation. Do not feel that it's not important. I think something we miss when we present is that the audience is wondering who we are. They really want to know who we are. And so if we don't tell them anything, we kind of miss an opportunity to connect in a more meaningful way. Lindsay says, growing up, I didn't have great role models for living a big life. I'm proud to say I have my own business that allows me flexibility to travel and to help others have big lives too. That's awesome. Congratulations on just that journey from where you started to where you are. And you can see how you can paint that story very quickly. I believe somebody earlier asked about telling stories. And so this is a great example of that. This is a story. You are a story. Don't rush past that in an effort to tell other stories and forget that you yourself are also a story. All right, so I think that is time. Oh, we're time for our next skill. So put a Y if you got it, or put an N if you have a question about that skill number 2, something I didn't cover. So Y if you're good, N if you're like, I need more. Thank you, thank you. Awesome, all right. Okay, let's move to our third skill. So this gentleman's name is Zach Taylor. I don't know him personally. He's a research assistant at the University of Texas at Austin. He's brilliant. He gave a fascinating talk about college students who are themselves in economic crisis and what it's like to go to school when you are looking for meals and basic needs. He also talked a lot about diversity. He's I think a really important type of figure for us, which is a person of some level of privilege who is acknowledging that and actively seeking to create more diversity and more access. So I really, really liked Zach a lot. And I liked his message. And you couldn't not like Zach because he got up there to keynote and he immediately said, I know my mom is going to watch the video of this. So hi, Mom. I'm so excited to do this, and like, hi to my sister. I mean, it was just so sweet. And he really was not afraid to show, like, I am excited to be up here. And I thought that was really nice. Sometimes we're a little nonchalant, or we try to act cool as ice and like, this is all normal. There's nothing wrong with showing a little bit of joy. And Zach kind of got me right off the bat. That's not the mindset that he did. That's just something I liked. Here is the example he gave that I wanted to share with you. He was talking about when he was in college, and he said, my car at the time was a 1991 Saturn with a broken moonroof and a 15-inch subwoofer. So there's so much to love about that statement. I just love the idea of, first off, a broken moonroof. So like not a roof anymore, just like a hole. Hopefully it was broken closed, so it's a roof. And also the idea that he had a broken, hole in his car, but he had a giant subwoofer. I love that. I think that so speaks to his priorities as a college student. And what I thought he did here really effectively is he didn't shy away from using details. A lot of times when we are speaking, I think this is a function of being afraid that people don't really care about our story, is we stay general. We say things like, oh, I remember I drove a bad car for a while. We don't get into what it was, but what's interesting is just by describing the car, you'll get such a powerful reaction from people because they connect to their own nostalgia about their first car, and also they can really picture it. So the idea here is when you're describing something or sharing something, how can you add 1 or 2 details, not more? You're not going on a long tangent that's not important, but 1 or 2 details that really brings that visual to life. Visual is the key word. When you're speaking, you want people to visualize what you're saying. All right, so the skill here, the mindset of memorable details is this. A planned tangent can be the most memorable thing that you say in a presentation. Planned tangent is a little clever phrase I made up to describe this moment when you seem like you're just kind of talking about something unimportant, but it turns out that later that's the thing people really remember because it's so vivid and it's so well described. So I want to see if we can try this, and I want to have you take a look at, yeah, let's look at, here's some questions we can do. So I'm seeing some smiles already. Describe your first car. So tell us the make, the model, or the color. And if you have one, share one quality about it that kind of stands out to you. First car, Spencer says, my first car was a beat up 1996 Toyota Tacoma that only had 2 hubcaps. Perfect. Like you perfectly proved the point, Spencer. That's great. That like really, I just love that image of the 2 hubcaps. Lindsay said a 1989 Saab 900, nice, that I had to plug in because the battery wouldn't hold a charge. Not without its flaws and challenges. She had a 1985 Buick Century with bumper stickers on the interior. That's really funny. That's the second time you've made me laugh, Shannon. I like that a lot. So why bumper stickers on the interior? Who? That's a mystery. Yeah, it's an intriguing mystery. Dana said a 1968 Ford Fairlane spray painted sky blue. I called it my blue cloud. I love that. Color is a great detail to add, for sure. Lindsay's Googling all these cars. I love that. All right, so, okay, Bryce, my first car was a 2-year-old 626. The car I drive now is a 1999 Honda Civic with rust and a roof tearing. All right, I recently passed it on to my son to buy my upgrade of a 2009 Corolla. I use this to compare my car to what students are driving, like brand new trucks. What a great example. Bryce, I'm sure you've heard this before, but I love the expression, what is it, big hat, no cattle, to describe people who look flashy, look like they have it all going on, but underneath are in debt and have bad habits, right? So you, my friend, are obviously the opposite of that, but what a great example of what it means to have real substance and your values lined up rather than just chasing being impressive. All right, so I'm going to jump ahead, but I want you to either jot down or pay attention to these other questions because they're also great ones to really share a little detail. Like you could describe yourself at your first day of your first job, or if you're teaching a lesson, tell us the moment when you learned it, right? Describe that moment. Instead of just say like, well, obviously this is important, tell us how you didn't know it and then learned it. That's much more memorable. Lamia said she had a small white car without AC. It was terrible in the summer. I can only imagine, Lamia, trying to imagine that car in Morocco or somewhere where it gets blazingly hot with no AC. All right, let's go to our 4th speaker and our 4th technique. And this one is from Dr. Helen Colby. She is a researcher at Indiana University. I had the pleasure of working with her on a research project around using humor to teach personal finance. So we did some really fun collaboration. And she is, it was really a great keynote because Dr. Colby brought a fierce truth to our conference. She talked about the real findings around financial education, and here is something that she said. We found that financial education actually increases the desire to spend. Holy crap. So you can imagine how that would go over in a room full of financial educators, people who are bought in, who are really believe in what they are doing. It was harsh. It was not easy to hear. And she continued to share data around, I mean, basically what this means is that, you know, people get so depressed when they learn about, think about finances that they actually go out and it triggers their coping mechanisms, which often are buying things, thanks to just the kind of the way our society is set up. But she went on to explain other types of things that didn't have the impact you might think. And then she started to talk about things that did. What I'm saying is that Dr. Colby was not afraid to depress us. And she really took us to a tense place because we were kind of like, should we all quit our jobs? You know, it was not an easy message. And then in the last like 10, 15 minutes, she started sharing actual examples of successes that they'd had, of easy skills that you can apply that do actually work. And you could feel the change in the room. And so I'm calling that technique the emotional elevator. And you do not have to do it as dramatically as Dr. Colby did it. You don't have to depress people and then like save them with hope. But I really love this idea that whenever you present, there is an emotional context to what you are saying. Lindsay, if you're talking about how to have more status at work, you know, you might be having people in the room who are picturing how trapped they feel in their current employment, right? How much their boss doesn't get them and how like much it sucks to be invisible and to be overlooked, right? And so that's an emotion that you can call out and you can work into your presentation simply by knowing that it's there. So the mindset of the emotional elevator is this. The way they feel during the presentation is how they'll feel after the presentation. It turns out that people remember very little of what you said specifically, but they will remember how they felt while you were talking. And so when we give depressing lectures on, you know, why kids shouldn't bully each other, or on drug overdose, or on whatever the debt, whatever the case may be, if you leave it in a depressing, information-heavy place, people will actually not want to think more about the subject. So the goal instead should be, how can I make this fun and relatable so that they actually want to think about this later and they remember it in a positive light? And you can both address and adjust the energy in the room. So let's try this. The way they feel during the presentation is how they feel after the presentation. When it comes to your subject, what does your audience, let's just do this one. What does your audience fear? What is something that they are afraid of that relates to your subject? Maybe an easier way to look at it would be, what is something they want to change? Yeah, student loan debt brings up a lot of fear. Loss, embarrassment of not having enough. Thanks, Dana. Yeah, coming off as like too full of yourself. Shannon, there's student loan debt and the process of dealing with it. Yeah, for sure. So one question might be, and I'm not sure how this would work with other subjects, but with finance, something that comes up for me is, what are they thinking but not saying about your subject? Like, for example, a student might be thinking, I'm horrible with credit cards and I'm really embarrassed because I made a lot of mistakes, right? So if you can call that out or normalize that or make that okay, you're going to connect to them so much more, and you're going to change their emotion because they're going to feel less alone. So this is basically vulnerability 101. You go first, right? Or you normalize the fact that there might be people in this room who are feeling like what I'm suggesting is impossible for them. And I want you to know it's not. And I know it's not because I used to think it was impossible for me. Right? So what I'm doing there, not so much conveying information, is I am tapping into the emotion that is going on in the room. Lamia, can you say more? The best way you can address the emotions in the room is just to call out what you know your audience might be struggling with, what might be distracting them from your message or from applying it. Lamia, let me know if if there's something specific you didn't understand or how I can be helpful. I can also go offline with you and make sure that we get it, because I think it's a really important point, and I love this idea of the emotional elevator. So I hope you are thinking about how you can use that in your own presentations going forward. And let's jump into, I just want to know, I've covered 4 different techniques, 4 different ways. I'd say any one of these is something you could use in a presentation. And, oh yes, of course, Lamia. The audience doesn't understand and they won't say it. Thank you, of course. Yeah, right? And so that can be a big one, is just to say, I know that this is complicated or feels complicated, and you are not, there's nothing wrong with you if you're feeling that way, right? That's a great example. Thank you. Lamia, you always give such great suggestions. That's a great example of tapping into the unspoken. Bryce said being vulnerable first and then inviting them to be vulnerable as well is really helpful. Yeah, especially if you go first, because then they know it's okay. I love that, Bryce. I'd love to hear you present, Bryce. All right, so looking at these 4 techniques, just pop into the chat the number of the one that for you stood out as the one you're like, I definitely want to try this one. You can pick more than one if you like more than one. All right, Shannon, they were all helpful. Number 1, to persuade themselves. Awesome. These are like really, from watching these presenters, I just want you all to know, I hear a lot of presentations, I give a lot of presentations, but these were all moments that I thought, that's actually really clever. And I was really impacted. Yeah, humanity and emotional elevator go hand in hand. Let me add one thing about the humanity one real quick. I got a chance to hear Al Gore talk about climate change, and I thought he did this really well. He started his speech by saying, you're going to feel really discouraged as I share what's going on, and you're going to feel really depressed. And I'm going to ask you to hang in there, because about halfway through this, I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to tell you the good things that are happening. And it seemed like an odd sentence at the time. I thought, like, that's weird to kind of give away how the structure of your speech. Man, it was so helpful. Because like 2 minutes in, I was like, I can't take this. This is so overwhelming. Oh no. And I was like, oh, but Al said, hang in there. And then sure enough, he did the emotional elevator exactly and changed the flow. And obviously you want to end on a positive. So I know if you talk about things like the wage gap, for example, and how sometimes little progress we're making to close that gender or racial pay gap, don't end there. End with one story of success or one tip that people can use, because otherwise they walk away and go, I'm never going to talk about this or think about this again. You see what I mean? Anyone else have a tip that really they'd be excited to try? That's great, Lindsay. Depress them. And then talk about success. Depress, then success. That's nice. I tried to elaborate and I made it worse. Did you feel that? And I was like, oh, no, no. Depress, then success. That's beautiful. I like that. Very good. Oh, wow. So those are 4 techniques, and there are so many that you could use. And I think it's really important to acknowledge that for people, when it comes to presenting, there is something different for everybody that's really going to take them to their next level. A lot of people who wrote in talked about nervousness, talked about looking for opportunities, talked about not knowing how to use the time well and be articulate and succinct. And so I wanted to let you know that I wanted to make a special thing available to you. I'm going to offer a public speaking breakthrough session. What this is we'd meet by phone or on Zoom, and I would lead you through an exercise where we identify what is the #1 barrier for you to either doing better with your public speaking or just feeling more comfortable and really connecting more with the audience. and using it to your advantage in your career. Whatever that barrier might be, we'll identify it, and then we'll outline a very simple plan for you to start to change it and to make progress in that exact area. As a speaker, I've had the pleasure of mentoring many presenters over the years, and this is something that I've provided for a lot of speakers because they've said, look, for me to get to this next level is really valuable, and it's actually going to open up a lot of possibilities for me. I typically charge $297 for this public speaking breakthrough session because of the investment that you are making in where you're going to go next. It seems like actually really good value. But I was thinking about it. It's almost Christmas. It was just Thanksgiving. I'm in a giving mood, and I wanted to just say, you know what? Let's take that 2 off of there. I want to make this available to you for $97. Now, this will only be available today, so you would have to reach out to me. Today, I'll give you a link in a second where you can go check out more about this. What I want you to understand is that for $97, I am going to be devoted to helping you move forward in your public speaking and really help you with your specific area of need to grow. In addition to the session, I'm also going to give you this guide that I wrote, how to beat those butterflies, overcome performance anxiety, and actually enjoy being on stage. I wrote this from some of my experiences as a comedian, so it's really funny. And it's really practical and really works through some of the psychology of the nervousness that people feel that keeps them from enjoying public speaking. So you'll get both of those things for $97 if you reach out today. And you know what? If you're in any way not convinced that this would be helpful for you, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to try and make it even easier. Today, you will only have to pay $1 to register for this session. And what we'll do is we'll do the session, and at the end of the session, I'll ask you if you feel like you got what you came for, if you feel like you have a clear plan and progress, and if you do, then great. I will charge you the remaining $96 for our session and know that I did a good job and helped you. If you don't feel that, then you walk away with a very low-cost conversation and guide that I'm really proud of. And so to do that, you would go to this link here, colinryanspeaks.com, that's my website, /DEC4 for December 4th. This is a very important date because this will only be available till midnight tonight, at which point it'll go back to its $297 price, still available to you if you want it. And also DEC4 is the code that you can use when you buy the session to make your price $1. So make that available to you, and whoops. And now we have a few minutes left. I tried to save a few minutes to find out if you had any questions that I hadn't covered. Thank you. Here's the link. That's great. December 4th. Any questions I haven't covered or any area that you would like to just pick my brain about public speaking, about one of the techniques that we covered? What comes up for you? Did anybody find that their number changed? Even just thinking about the idea of speaking with some of these techniques in place or with a coach to support them, did anybody feel like their initial number of how comfortable they are as a public speaker changed in the time that we were having this conversation? Oh, nice. Somebody wrote to me privately. I won't say who, and said, yes, it's helped. So I won't out you, but I appreciate that. Okay, question from Bryce. What are some techniques to find interesting stories to share, whether my own or others? That could be a whole webinar, Bryce. Where to identify interesting stories to share. Yeah, that would be a whole webinar. What I can tell you about stories is that the details are very important. And something I recommend is when you tell a story, to tell it as a scene or an image. Don't tell us like a long arc, but try to give us one image that we can really key into. The example being, I had a 1991 Saturn with a broken moonroof and a 15-inch subwoofer. Like, that's a story in and of itself, but it's not like burdened by too many extra details with a long arc. It's just a simple image, right? The other thing I would recommend, Bryce, is identify stories that would relate to the audience that you're speaking to. So ask that audience, what have they experienced when it comes to personal finance that they can share, right? And I can follow up with you, Bryce. There's probably a lot more about where to find stories, but like I said, that could be a whole other webinar. Maybe we'll do that next year. Dana said, impromptu speaking, do you have a formula in your head? Yeah, good question. Shannon also wants to know, wondering if notes are used or PowerPoint. My biggest suggestion with notes is that you write it down in as big a font as possible that you can glance down at it and see the word, right? So in a Word document, this would be like an 18 or a 19 size font. This will force you to use less information so that you're not reading your notes. So I make a set list available, and this is actually something that if you wanted to follow up with me, I could guide you through a process to make your own set list and give you some examples that would show you how to make a little tool so you can effectively impromptu speech with a plan. That's the best I can describe. If your impromptu speaking literally means, hey, Dana, will you get up and start talking? Obviously, you're not going to have time for a set list. In that case, I would be curious, what works for you, Dana? What is a formula that you kind of try to keep in mind? I've asked you a tough question at 2 o'clock. Address the point, right? I mean, honestly, that's it. If you're being asked to get up there and speak and you can hit your main point and then sit down, you've done something unique and remarkable, right? Most people ramble. So this is an opportunity for you to just be succinct, and that alone will help you stand out. So I think you're on the right track already. I can obviously give you some other tips and tools if you'd like, so please reach out. So there's the link. I want to be sensitive to your time. It's 2 o'clock. That went really fast. I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I hope you got a lot out of it. And I just want to thank you all for being here. This was really fun. And I am totally available if you have questions. I love coaching presenters on their presentations. So if I can be a support to you, I'm right here. There's my website, and my email is colin@colinryanspeaks.com. I say thank you all and enjoy the rest of your day and yeah, the rest of your month, and be well and reach out if you have questions. I'm here to help. Take care, you guys.